Well, hey, my name is Ryan. You're watching Creative Sound Lab, a weekly recording show where audio recording is an art form. And for this week's episode, I'm going to be pulling out kind of a case study. This is a recording that I made for a good friend of mine, Flint Ziegler, and we just wanted to do for friends and family one Christmas, early December. We actually had an in-studio concert for them and made a live recording and put it to video. This is not something I've made really a big deal of on my channel, but it was just something fun to do. Well, the recording actually came out pretty good, and I used a few techniques a little bit differently than I would use in a regular mixing situation. I'm going to kind of walk you through a few of the methods that I use, and really just to kind of help make recording sound a little more full, a little more studio-like. Instead of sounding flat and lifeless like live recordings often do, I'd like to show you a few techniques that I use personally to get around that problem. So for today, I'm going to be really hoping that you'll be doing this along with me. By following the link on the screen or the link below, you can get the raw tracks for today, pull them up in your own DAW, and mix along with me. So check out this footage from when this live recording was made. These are the actual mics, these are the actual tracks that we're going to be manipulating today. Check it out. Okay, so for this setup, really it was all about using the nulls of both the guitar amp and the nulls of the microphone. And it wasn't a perfect situation, but I did the best that I could. So usually the way that I start this off is I start out with the overhead mic. And let's just, this is looking down obviously from the ceiling down onto the floor. And I have, this is kind of the center of the stage area, if you will. And so somewhere right over the snare, I had my overhead mic. And just a single overhead mic for this setup. And then what I did is pointed the guitar cabinet, and I pointed kind of the side at it. Sound coming out of the front of the amp meets with the sound coming out of the back. And it's canceling along the sides of that amp. And we're using that to our advantage by using a single overhead mic and using that along basically the side null of this guitar cabinet. Then from here we mic up the drums as usual. We have a kick mic, probably an M88 on kick, probably E604s on toms, probably Audix i5 on snare. Most likely SM57 on the guitar cabinet, just all really standard stuff here. This is why it's such a good case study to review. Even on vocal, SM58. But I noticed even from the video that the vocalist is not standing in front of the drums, he's standing to the side of the drums, right? And even his angle, he's just slightly angled towards me, which means that his mic is pointing a little bit away from the drums. Also, the SM57 is pointing just slightly away. So it might have even been an angle kind of like this on that guitar cabinet, okay? So just that little bit of angle is increasing just a little bit more rejection of that kit. And this is really it. There's no room mics. We're going to have to synthesize the three-dimensional qualities of the room and really kind of make this and shape this into a three-dimensional sound. Okay, so I have the track pulled up here in my DAW. I'm just going to go ahead and play for you the raw tracks. What I've done here is bounced my effects to these tracks below so that I don't have to continually use the effect. I can go ahead and bounce it down and free up my processing power. But this is just the raw tracks. Then we'll go through and talk about what I'm doing with all the effects and panning and everything else. Let's check out the raw tracks here.
Above my head, velvet curtains in violent red, new white dress and you're so decadent.
Okay, so that's just a little bit of the raw tracks that I'm doing with here today. These are the 7 tracks here. Kick, snare, tom 1, tom 2, overhead, guitar, vocal. And then on the next channel, I have kind of my effects that I have set up on a return. We'll talk about that in a moment. But really, my first start to any mixing process is literally just to go through and turn down every track and just kind of zero everything out. Go through all the panning, get all the panning so it's centered, all the tracks down. And then I start with my priority. So the priority is probably going to be the guitar and then the vocal after that. Depending on the genre, the vocal could be number 1. You just want to really make sure that whatever you have that's special about these elements is preserved. And then everything else kind of refers to it. So let's just have a listen to these.
My heart turned black. I am sitting here waiting on a train, and I swear I lose my mind this time each day.
Then I'm just going to start pulling up other elements. So with the drums, I'll start with the overhead first, use that as my guide, and then pull the other elements in.
My heart turned black. I am sitting here waiting on a train, and I swear I lose my mind this time each day. And they say that God hears a man when he prays, but I don't feel we're connecting today.
So you can see that this gets us the typical live recording. It's pretty flat. There's not a whole lot of life to it. And we need to get from point A to point B at this point. Really, this kind of sucks, okay? This doesn't have any life to it. It's not enjoyable to listen to. So the first thing we have to really address is compression. Let's get everything nice and loud. Let's get all the volumes working with us instead of constantly dipping in and dipping out. So let's just go ahead and start with the kick. Now the kick, what I've done is, wow, that's a crazy EQ curve. But basically what I've done is use the UAD 1176 plugin. I really like this Blue Stripe version for low-end material. It sounds really good. It's a really kind of dirty sounding compressor, at least to my ears. But let's see what this is doing to the sound.
Heart turned black.
This is off. Here's compressed. And with any compression, if you want to hear what it's doing, then you just turn the volume down. So you can see there that I have it matched up pretty well for before and after. But if we really want to hear what it's doing, then we really just need to turn the volume down and listen at lower volumes. Here's the same example again with it on, and then I'll turn it off. Here's off. Here's on. So we can really hear how it's almost like we're hearing a little bit more of the resonance of the drum. It's almost like a little bit of kind of a bouncy kind of sound that the beater of the kick drum's hitting and kind of bouncing on the head a little bit. Just little details are popping up that we wouldn't hear without compression. It's also kind of smoothing out the low end, and my goal for this compressor is to really make all the low end consistent. That's really key for this, is trying to get that low end consistent. And it does sound a little weird, compressed. You know, you can hear it really working there, but in the mix, it'll sound okay. There's going to be a level where it's not going to matter any sort of weirdness of the artifacts from the compression. It's compressed pretty hard. Pretty fast attack and release. I'm just watching for the music in the meter. Okay, watch for the music in the meter. That's all I can say about compression. Is like literally just watch it react to the music. So I can see that it's returning in time to be ready for the next note, and I can see the music in the meter. If you can't see the music in the meter, then your compression might be too slow. And that would be a chance to speed up that release time so it can return and be ready for that next note. So then I added some crazy EQ. I just kind of went a little bit nuts with this huge peak here. I usually wouldn't recommend doing something like that, but hey, if it works, then go for it. But most everything else, the other three bands of EQ here are reductive, subtractive EQ here. So I have some taken out at shade under 400, a little bit right under 2K, and a little bit from the top. I'm not exactly sure why I did a little bit from the top, but I'm really just kind of trying to smooth out, and really I'm listening to this in the context of a mix, and evidently this frequency was a little bit too hard, as was the attack of the kick drum. But then we have snare. So this is the raw track. Okay, so with this compressor, I'm probably going to be looking for more of like a fattening kind of sound. Yeah, so, you know, real fast attack, real fast release, so that it's actually cutting down the compressor is only interacting with this sound very quickly at the beginning and then immediately getting away as fast as it possibly can. It's reducing because it's a compressor, therefore, when I add my makeup gain, that means that it's actually adding in the sustain. Okay, the part that this actually has nothing to do with, it's still affected by that output. So we're taking down the transient here, but we're raising the whole thing, and by doing so, we're raising up that sustain. That's why it's sounding fatter. This isn't like too crazy, just 4-to-1 here, a little bit of reduction here, kind of in the middle, just subtle fattening, okay? And let's move on to the next one. Okay, so here's the overhead, and this was just really compression. This is, once again, just trying to get everything under control. This is really the first thing that I do is pull down all the faders and then add compression. Let's check out and see what I'm doing here with this compressor. Once again, if we turn the volume down, we can really hear the effects of what we're doing with the compression. So, once again, just kind of getting things under control. This is a set attack time, but the release is at 100. It's a 2-to-1 ratio, so I'm just trying to kind of, get things under control. So we'll go ahead and call that track compressed. I can turn off the effects here, but then go to my pre-bounced. This is basically the same effect. So let's see here. Kick snare overhead, and then let's see what I did to the toms here. Let's see here. Tom overhead. Okay. Okay, let me go to the bounce track to see what the end result was. And really for this, I have a couple of different compressors that I was evidently experimenting with. I'm really just looking to add sustain. So just like the snare, I really want to kind of have it cranked and get that tom sounding like it's ringing for like a whole second. Let's see what this sounds like on the raw track here and with the compressor added. Okay, that's pretty extreme. Let's try something else. Let's try this guy here. Okay, so for this I might go somewhere in the middle and definitely fast release and see what this sounds like. Okay, a little more there. Okay, so I'm kind of taking it to the extreme here, but in reality, if you can hear it in the mix, you might have a little too much compression. But if it sounds good, then you got it about right. If the sounds sound weak, then you might need a little bit more compression. So that's kind of the way to gauge it, is if your drums sound just kind of lifeless, meaning that they're almost squashed too much and they are subdued a little bit, then you can basically use extreme setting to find what the compressor is doing and then back it down. So I don't know, how about right in there? Okay, so that's probably about what I did. I have a few different things going on here, but that's really all I did for the toms. Go ahead and replace that on the bounced track so I can get back to my original mix. So that's really the drums. And moving on, the guitar, let's see what I did for that. Okay, compression, whoops. A little bit of EQ on the low end, and some effects here. So really for the guitar, I'm just trying to get it to sit, trying to get it to play nice in the mix. Let's see what the original guitar sounds like along with that compression. Okay, so once again, I can see the music in my meters, and also if I go back to this quieter passage, see right there, see that right around between 1 and 3. Okay, so really this is covering the whole range of what he's playing, so that's good. I like that. Kind of, you have to just kind of play around with the speed, 4-to-1, okay, whatever, Then I added some EQ, just, a high pass, okay, real basic stuff here. See what this sounds like off. Let's see here. So I'm just trying to take care of a little bit of mud there. And then I added some effect here. Let's see what this sounds like. So, it's really subtle, okay? Really subtle. It's got a little bit of pre-delay of 60 milliseconds. It's short, and it's kind of muddy, okay? So that's kind of my approach there. But this is where the real stuff happens, okay? I have everything compressed. I have some minor EQ happening, but I'm really relying on the sounds of the mics to get me the sounds that I want. So here's where I really start to take shape in the mix. First of all, I got to decide, is there anything that's going to be panned? Really, I have the overhead is mono, so you could say, well, that kind of sucks, I got mono drums, but I could pan those toms a little bit, right? And kick and snare down the middle. But I also have the vocal down the middle, and so the guitar kind of needs to be, for my approach here, I decided to go out to one side with it, okay? And so here's kind of what a mix sounds like before any of the effects that I add to add some three-dimensional qualities to this mix.
You got blue eyes and nicotine, a glass of whiskey, and I go to sleep. When I think about you, do you think about me?
Okay, so that's where I'm at now. Now, what I did, because a lot of times if you have snare that isn't captured along with room mics, it sounds really flat. So what I started doing is sending this to another channel over here, and that channel has a reverb on it. And so for different things, I had different reverbs, and I had 3 total reverbs. And so this first one here was drums verb. So to that I have, let's see here, kick, snare, tom-tom, overhead, and I have a little bit of, let's see here, a little bit of everything in there of varying levels here. Let's see here. Actually, no kick. Okay, snare, definitely. And -10 on the tom 1, -4.5 on tom 2, and pretty much nothing on the overhead. So it's really just the snare and the overheads. Let's see what this sounds like.
You got blue eyes and nicotine, a glass of whiskey, and I go to sleep. When I think about you, do you think about me? I am sitting.
Now in reality, in the final mix, I probably had it down probably about -10 or so.
You got blue eyes and nicotine, a glass of whiskey, and I...
Yeah, somewhere in there, probably -12, okay? And that just is helping to shape the three-dimensional qualities of the drums. And from here, it doesn't stop. We actually can go further. We have our guitar track. It's pretty flat. Here's what it sounds like.
You got blue eyes and nicotine.
Okay, and what I've done is send it to its own reverb here. And so that's going to 10, the track 10 here. And this track is basically just taking the input from whatever I send it and spitting it back out to our main stereo bus here. And so here's the guitar reverb. Now we have the guitar slightly to the right. So what I'm going to do with this is kind of make a call and response type reverb, almost like a stereo recording where you have somebody on the right, but the reverb's on the left-hand side. It gets us a really wide stereo image that way. And I don't know where I started doing this, but it always really works to if you have 2 guitars, to have a reverb for each guitar, but on its opposite side. So the reverb for guitar 1 is on the same side as guitar 2, but guitar 2 dry is, has its reverb where guitar 1 is. So it's basically kind of crisscrossed. So the guitar is on the right, the reverb is on the left. You can do this with 2 guitars, 3 guitars. I'd probably have the 3rd guitar down the middle. Here's what this sounds like.
You got blue eyes and nicotine, a glass of whiskey, and I go to sleep. When I think about you, do you think about me? I am sitting here waiting on a train, and I swear I lose my mind.
So it's just a matter of how big you can get away with doing this. Super big, kind of big, whatever. I mean, you can go balls to the wall with this stuff and get a really big sounding recording. A few notes about this is that this is kind of a muddy reverb, okay? The low end is all the way up, the high end's all the way down. There's a little bit of pre-delay on it, which is great. It's a short verb, okay? So this is not like a big, long, vocalist reverb or something for some like cheesy slow track, music that mom listens to. No, this is just a really short verb that's emulating like a concert hall, okay? So moving on to the vocal. Let's see what this sounds like.
You got blue eyes and nicotine, a glass of whiskey, and I go to sleep when I think about you.
So what I'm doing here is really just simulating kind of a slapback sound. I don't want to muddy it up like too much because I have so much going on with the drums and guitar. And so I'm just adding a little chorus and adding some pre-delay to it.
You got blue eyes and nicotine, a glass of whiskey, and I go to sleep. When I think about you, do you think about me? I am sitting here waiting on a train, and I swear I lose my mind this time each day.
So the mix is really starting to shape up now. I've compressed it. I've gotten everything under control. I've dealt with any sort of issues as far as really bad bleed. For instance, I had the low end taking out of the electric guitar here. And I could even do that with the vocal as well. Really just trying to find your problem spots with subtractive EQ, take them out. Instead of adding in what you want to hear, take out the stuff you don't want to hear. From here, I just start to review things like, okay, how does the low end sound? How does the mid sound? Is the mid fitting in with that vocal? Is the vocal reverb complementing the vocal sound that I have? Is it adding, if it's a muddy vocal sound, I probably don't want too muddy of a vocal reverb. It'll just make the problem worse. So here I have kind of a thin sounding nasally vocal sound. So I mean, it's a SM58. I'm adding some kind of lush low end, hopefully, with my vocal effect. So that's really, in a nutshell, my approach to live track mixing here. I didn't go too much into what I have on the vocal here. It's basically just some compression, some EQ to cut out the kick drum and stuff like that. But I made it work. The key thing is just to use short verbs on key channels here. So not on kick, but on snare. And then for guitar, to be very carefully using appropriate short reverbs and countering them with your panning. So if your guitar one is on your left, put the guitar one reverb on the right. And then you can mirror that with guitar two. For vocal, try to vary it up. Don't use the same reverb too many times. Maybe use a slapback. But really, it can be done. This is, really surprising how just a few well-placed reverbs and panning, and of course compression to keep it all under control, that you can really get a good mix happening. Okay, so I hope this really helped you out today. And, really, it's just about experimenting. You have to just work on this. You have to take your time, just really seeing what works and what doesn't. If your reverbs sound a little fake, then they could be a little too long. Maybe try shortening up the reverbs. Maybe add a lot of EQ on the reverbs. If you have them separated out to a return or something, you can apply EQ just for the reverbs. Maybe make them really dark. Maybe put a little delay on them. You just have to try these various things to really get certain effects to kind of gel with the sounds that you have. So once again, if you wanted the raw tracks for this so you can be trying this in your own system, in your own DAW, please do so. You can find those via the links on the screen or the links in the description. So if you have any comments or questions, feel free to post them below. If you have any tips for me, maybe you have an idea that I've never even tried or you want to share with me, awesome. I'd love to hear about it, and please share with our community that we have here. I love you guys. I love making these videos for you. You've been awesome to hear back in the comments, so please keep that up. I'll see you next week.